Well, thank you very much for joining me, Nihit.
Hi, Sheldon. Hope you're doing well.
I'm very well, thank you. So without further ado, I'd like to just jump straight into some of the questions that I have for you. Um, Firstly, I'd like to ask you for your personal background. It seems from what I found online, you're quite the financial guru, as well as a passionate writer. So the first question I have for you is mostly, what were you like as a child? Because I can imagine that some of the traits you have now would have stemmed from early childhood.
Yeah, so as a child, I was a naughty kid. I was a curious kid and a naughty kid as well. So, with a slight artistic bent of mind as well, was way too much into reading. But the first book which I read as a child was actually, if you remember, there used to be an Anded Blyton series, which I read through my school library. So we had to go through a couple of stories from there. So that was my first reading experience, and then since then, I have always been an avid reader. So
Quick summary of myself from the book. Found it fascinating. It's one of the only books that I can honestly say was a comprehensive guide. So it touched on many different things. Actually, in the run up to this podcast, I found it very hard to come up with questions for you because in the book you had explained so much and answered so much. I had a few questions when I went into it before I read the book, and within the first few chapters, you had answered it. Okay. Well, if you're happy to, I'd jump straight into the book. You have 10 chapters. We've selected just five to speak about. So as I said before, they're just uh, so dense with information that you could probably spend a whole podcast just on one chapter. Um, these are the ones that we came up with. The first one's gratitude, chapter two. Um, Great that it was so early in the book. It really sets the tone for the book. That gratitude is one of the most important things you can have, regardless of what field or industry you're in, just in life. Changes the perspective you have. So, one of the first questions, you put quite a few definitions of gratitude. What was your best definition?
So my definition, in simple terms, I think written a quite detailed definition after doing a lot of research. But if I were to give a simple definition to your listener, it would be very simple. That be thankful of what you have been given, and see what you can contribute to the world, so that the world can be thankful to you as well. So it's the reciprocity as well as what you can offer is what gratitude is all about. Be happy that what you have is good enough for your story to begin, and then what you make out of it is what gratitude will help you to. Because see, gratitude is is actually not one skill. It's actually father of a lot of skills which I've spoken about in the book. So I have personally experienced that when I'm being thankful to a lot of more people, a lot more opportunities come my way, a lot more good worldly advice comes my way, a lot of networking comes my way, just because of being plainly gratitude to having gratitude to my mentors, to my parents, to my wife. It really helps in terms of growing me as an individual. So that's the reason why I think gratitude is an important aspect of anybody's personality, because it really stems you as a person, and it gives you so many virtues which you can't even imagine.
Gratitude, I think, is in short supply in today's society. Everything is now, I feel, disconnected. When you're online, you aren't really talking to another human, or that's how it feels. So when you're in person, it's quite the disconnect between how social interactions online happen in the real world as well. During my time as a construction worker, that's what I'm doing now. In construction, there's not much gratitude for anything. Everyone's there just to do a job, get money, and go home. There's no friends. There's nothing. There's no passion for most, anyway. You meet the occasional person, which is just grateful to do what they enjoy, if it's driving trucks or cranes or whatnot. And it's those sort of people that have something about them, something about just turning up, doing a simple, mundane task, but feeling like you have purpose, feeling like you're happy to be there. There's a lot that aren't. So the next question, you spoke deeply about gratitude. I learned quite a lot from it. You also put some of the myths surrounding gratitude, which I hadn't have thought of originally.
Uh, Sheldon, pardon me. Just can you repeat that question? It was not very clear.
Sure. So you spoke about some of the myths that surround gratitude, which I hadn't thought of previously.
Yeah, yeah, that was something my childhood friend actually recommended me to add, because there are, and I'm really grateful that he told me, because we are speaking about it today. Gratitude has been misconstrued as a lot of things. It has been construed as if you'll show your vulnerability, that your happiness is dependent on someone. That's again a myth. No, it's not. Yes, it's you might show that, but I think if you're being grateful to what you have been given from others, I think that's something very beautiful, which you should be cherishing. It might make you feel look like weak, which is also one of the reason. It might also, it is also misconstrued that if you're being too much, if you practice gratitude way too much, you might be perceived as a optimistic fool, which uh, which I'm okay with. To be honest, I'm okay if somebody wants to call me that, because it shows their maturity that they call me fool. But I mean, just be thankful to what I've been received, and frankly, I have received a lot from the world, in terms of not only just from childhood, even when I was writing the book, the amount of support which I got from my better half, from my parents, from the community in general, was really really appreciative. I really cherished those time when I was looking out for a lot of support from people. So yeah, you can call me optimistic fool, but that's fine. I'm gonna still keep doing my own thing. Sometimes it is also construed that, keep the hunger alive. If you are gratitude means you can become complacent quite quickly enough, which I think is not something which people recommend when you are in high performing jobs or when you are trying to achieve a long trajectory. But I don't believe. My feeling is that gratitude is something which, these are the myths. Gratitude is something which you should practice every day. Be thankful to what you have been given every day, and what and that's the example you need to set for your kids, for your community around that. Practicing gratitude helps a lot more causes than it destroys, or
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like we said before, gratitude is in short supply. So what are some of the ways that you can show gratitude? You wrote about quite a few.
Yeah, I wrote quite a few. The one which so there are two different settings in which you can actually practice gratitude. One is in a personal setting, and one is in a corporate team setting, right? So for personal setting, I just start with saying simple thank you to people. These thank yous will come back. The problem is that we don't say enough thank yous. We don't say enough thank yous to our helpers. We don't say enough thank yous to our wives and partners. We don't say thank you enough to our parents. Just see, when you say thank you to your parents, and how their eyes light up. It's $1 million light up, to be honest. And when you say thank you, they actually bless you with even more blessings, and that counts a lot, to be honest. So tomorrow, if my son turns up and says thank you, dad, I will be really happy then, because it validates my effort which I've been putting onto him for a very long, sustainable period of time. So I think that's something which we should all do, and that's very simple. The second thing which I generally practice sometimes when I'm really downtrodden with a lot of emotions is I try to write what has good happened with me, what good has been bestowed upon me. Just write it on a piece of paper. When once it becomes physical in nature, it drives a lot of motivation and a lot of help to you, that, okay, if this can happen, yes, you will able to be making it. So don't worry about it. Don't worry too much about it. So that's something which is self-validating. I think you should do, if you practice that, and then when you share it, let's say put it on a fridge, or put it on your cupboard in the bedroom. There would be people coming around, and if they read it, they also feel happy about it, because they will be featuring in it as well, right? So I think that helps in terms of creating that aura around it. So that's about personal settings. In corporate settings, find a way to uh, genuinely give good jobs. The use the word good job. If you use the word good job more, and don't use it too much, but use it in an ample amount where it's really a good job. so that it helps the team motivate that they are doing something which is nice. Um, and also motivate people to use that word with others, so that it needs to start as a ripple. If it is a ripple, then it becomes a pattern in the team, and that not only boosts the morale of people who are working, it also boosts the morale of the entire floor where people are working. um, I like noisy offices, because noisy offices are people where you're trying to do something, and they're motivated to do something. I I don't like offices which are stunned silence offices, and there could be places where you'll find stunned silences, and you'll feel like you could even hear a keyboard clicking away, a mouse clicking. I have been in those offices, but how quickly you can transform those offices into a noisy office where people are motivated doing things, where there's a lot of activity happening. I think that's where the gratitude comes into picture, and that's where motivation through gratitude comes through the picture in the picture.
Yeah, that's very interesting how you split it into personal and corporate. Um, they both kind of come from the same root, but are used slightly different.
Yeah, so my feeling is always that I have always felt that a corporate life or an office life or a work life or even a site life like where you are working, they're all somehow from a principalistic point of view connected to your personal life. If you're happy in personal life and happy in personal space, you'll be happy at your workspace as well, and the vice versa. If you're not happy in the workspace, it will definitely impact your personal space as well. You People say that you can keep your personal life and professional life separate. You really can't. You Let's not attempt. There will always be lines in between connected, where personal life and professional lives are connected.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. On the flip side of gratitude, you may have something, one of the barriers that someone might face to gratitude, which would be stress, which is also in your book, chapter six. Stress for me was quite a big topic. As I said before, I don't think I have a favorite chapter, all of them, maybe, because each one speaks to a different area of your life, but so well in the book. And stress six, chapter six, the biggest part I took away from that chapter was how we understand stress. That it's not just good and bad types. Um, what's your definition of stress, and how can we understand it?
My definition of stress is again very simple, so that everybody can understand and use it. Be it an 8-year-old child, 10-year-old child, a housewife, a working professional, an old person. When there is a difference between an expectation and a reality, that is what causes stress. If your expectations are this high and the reality is this, the difference is what is stress. Now this could be good stress, it could be bad stress, both ways. Now it's up to you how you want to decide where this balance comes into the picture. If you are able to find that balance, you will not have stress. See, we humans are the way I have understood over a period of time is that we humans tend to plan a lot of things for ourselves, and we kind of have certain amount of expectations, which is hardwired into our brains. And when you have those expectations, there could be some sort of reality checks. Like for example, there could be a possibility where you might be angry at your brother that he has not done something which you expected him to do, or you're angry with your partner that
Hmm.
you were expecting something from her or him, and he has not done it or she has not done it. There could be, and that will create a stress. Now it's up to you as an individual, how much do you want to expect and how much do you want to experience it in reality, and that is where the balance comes into the picture.
Yeah, that's very interesting because it gives you the power to overstress. It's not something that happens to you; it's your opinion to it.
Yeah, so stress is something which we take on a voluntary basis. How much stress you want to take is up to you. It's not up to the situation or surrounding or other people. It's up to you how much you want to get worried or take on additional stress on top of your brain.
Right, and that's fascinating because when you go through life, you meet a wider range of people. Some can handle stress, a lot of stress. Some prefer to avoid as much as possible. So your lesson here gives the individual the key to handling their own amount of stress.
Exactly. That's what I have felt and experienced over a period of time. You can worry about little things. You can let them go. It is up to you. How do you classify those little things?
Yeah. And for the people that are in a high stress job like yourself, how could you then use stress as opposed to running away from it?
I don't think you can run away from it. I don't think you have an option there that you can brush it off under the carpet and deal with it later. That's a different story. But I don't think you can run away. You have to stress as a guest in your house that you have to deal with. Either you feed it or you let him go. Both are your options. Now, in terms of handling stress, so what I have done in my book, and that's what I feel, there are two types of stress which we have. One is called EU stress, which is a very good type of stress which motivates you to do things. Fine. And there's something called distress, which is a bad type of stress, which increases your blood pressure, increases your sugar levels, and etc. Now, again, this comes to the individual, how much of good stress and bad stress you want to take. Like my dad used to say that I was doing an event which was leading a team of 150 people in school in college, and I spoke to him and he told me I'm very stressed out because I'm leading doing this. It's you're aiming for something quite high, so it's a good stress. Take it as a motivation that you're trying to do something which could be pushing you to the boundaries, not breaking you while doing it, but pushing you through the boundaries. But it's a good kind of stress which you're taking on. So don't worry about it.
Mm,
Don't fret too much about it. Just keep doing what you're doing, and things will happen. Just keep pushing through the time. Now there could be a bad type of stress where somebody is in the hospital and you're stressed about whether the person will survive or not, like what was happening during COVID. During COVID, people were not able to do anything to anyone, but they were getting stressed out because their loved ones were in danger. And I'm pretty sure that none of the people who are left on planet Earth don't have a relative or a distant relative who have not passed away during COVID. I stopped counting after 15, but yeah. So and you couldn't do anything. You really couldn't do anything to save them, protect them, because that would be meaning jeopardizing yourself as well. So uh, now that's a very bad kind of stress to deal with. This is the kind of stress which gives you high blood pressure, tension, and you have to deal with them by either distracting yourself or doing something constructive about it and not think about it too much. But you really have to tide through it, uh, through through the whole episode. And I think that's what pretty much people did during COVID. That you're even though you are locked out in your homes and you still have access to information of what's happening to your loved ones, but then they had a life to lead to protect themselves. So people dealt with it. You really can't do anything more about it. That was a very yeah, that was a very distressful time for human mankind.
mm. Yeah, no, definitely. And that's just to bring back to the first part you said about how good stress is, where you have some tension, you have some something to push back on, which is beneficial. And I think that's one of the definitions of flow state when you're in the absolute peak of the experience. Time is irrelevant. It's because you have just enough resistance and stress to your talent level.
Correct, correct. I think that's aptly put. Yeah.
So, for the people that don't necessarily know how to cope with stress, how can you recover it, especially for those people that have lived maybe past their midlife, they're getting on now? How can you recover from chronic stress?
Chronic stress is if it is chronic, I would say seek medical help. That's one thing. But day-to-day stress, I think I would say three things which I think you should definitely do, and I'm trying to do that with my son as well. That develop hobbies which are one which touch your spirit, and that could be anything. It could be reading, it could be music, it could be um, something which is quite internal to do. Second hobby which you should definitely develop, which has something to do with your body. So it could be running, it could be running marathons, it could be swimming, it could be any sport which you want to pick up. And the third thing, one something which challenges you on an intellectual level. So it could be learning a new language or learning a new programming language for that matter. So these three, once you have these three in place, it will help you to seek comfort and take a distractive mode from your stress and get onto these hobbies of yours, which will help you cope your brain using a completely different brain center of the brain, which will help you to cope up with the stress. And then when you come back to the same situation, like for example, if you're facing a lot of work pressure, and it's a negative work pressure because your boss is not a good person, or maybe your team is giving you added on pressure because you're new there. uh, these are real problems which can happen to anyone in work environment. So that's where these hobbies will come into the picture. Once you have these hobbies, you will find enough motivation to go back and fight with the situation, because these are literally mental battles which somebody has to fight to get through the stress. The fourth thing which I generally prescribe a lot of people, and I kind of like it myself, is if you have access to nature, be around it. Maybe you can spend time in Hyde Park or in Regent's Park or in or just cruising on Thames. You can do all of that, or go to Lake District and spend like few days. Take a break. Those so these are not something which is new. I'm not inventing anything
Mm.
here. This is something
Yeah.
which are in tons of books and blogs that you can go and read. But I don't see a lot of people practicing them. And if you practice them, because I have practiced this myself, and when you practice them, it really helps you to not only fight the situation, it also brings on people who are completely a different set of people who you will be experiencing life with. So, for example, I'm doing something after writing the book. I'm doing something in the movie world with some of the players. Now it's a completely different world from finance world. Now it's a very completely stark difference in between both of them, and that's uh, I like the switch on and switch off. Like I switch off the finance and put on the creative guy, and then become the creative guy. I kind of like it because when you're being creative, you are actually using your brain completely differently as compared to you using it in finance. So it's quite fun to be in that kind of a zone. But I know everybody can't create that zone, so that's the reason why you need to develop hobbies around it. You need to develop something around it. If you are not being pragmatic, practical about it, no one else will be, because everybody has their own life to lead. So you can't be thinking that my wife will do that for me or my husband will do that for me. No, sorry, you will have to do that on your
Yeah,
own.
yeah. And I think one thing that speaks to what you said there about COVID, how lots of people were isolated. And I myself got into buying plants. As you can see behind me, I have quite a few. Um, Now I have well over probably 50 plants, and I live in a part of the UK that is surrounded by beautiful pine forests. And it's interesting you say
Yeah,
that because my partner, she was in London studying, she would come down for the weekend from the concrete jungle to an actual jungle, to an actual forest, and she would see such a difference. Everything's calm, people are more friendly. The one part she didn't like about London was that it was so busy all the time. You step outside, you've constantly got to go, go, go. So coming to me on the weekend was like a spa retreat for her. And like I say, during COVID, I know a lot of my friends were getting into houseplants, um, other forms of meditation type of things as well.
yeah, correct. Do meditation. That actually quite helps. It calms you down. Uh, Personally, I do meditate, but I find reading more meditative than anything else. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, that's brilliant. And I guess from meditation we can get into spiritual intelligence, which is the next chapter, chapter 7. And the story you said and expertly crafted in the book about how you came on the path of spiritual journey. Do you mind just telling our listeners how you came to it?
yeah, so being Indian and being spiritual is something which go hand in hand, and that's the upbringing I had as well as when I was a kid. And I think the story is about my grandfather, and he was trying to uh, teach me Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Now, Bhagavad Gita is a book which is a very important book in Hinduism. It tells you about how you're supposed to lead life, how are you supposed to solve problems, and if you are in a dilemma, how do you want to solve your dilemma. But when he was making me study it, I was only 14 or 15, and at the 14, 15, you don't have a lot of life experience. I studied with him. I did the whole book with him, but then I don't think I understood a lot. uh, yeah, there are a couple of rules, and I don't understand what exactly those rules are. But fine, I'll since he motivated me to read, and I wanted to read, so he was a very great companion to have for understanding it. But when I became like a 25, 27 year old, I went back to the same book and I studied it, and I found it absolutely timeless and relevant. Be it any era, any eon of humankind, this book will remain relevant. Be it AI, in the age of AI or age of industrial revolution or Renaissance, you pick up any age, this book will be equally relevant. And that's when I kind of understood. And one thing which I wanted to make very clear to people, to your listeners as well, that being spiritual and being religious are completely different things. They are complete. Let's not confuse them. Generally, what happens is people confuse being spiritual and being religious. I know a lot of people who are well educated, done with their MBAs, but done with their graduations and postgrad and PhDs. And they still think that being spiritual and being religious are the same thing, but they are not. I call myself as being very spiritual person, but my wife calls herself as a more religious person than spiritual.
Wow. So what would be the difference for you? What's a good category to categorization of religious and spiritual? How they differ?
For me, when you're religious, the word religion comes from when you're being disciplined about a certain amount of uh, rituals which are embedded in the iconography and the methodology of a religion. So, like for example, if you take Islam, you have to read prayers 5 times a day, or you have to observe a 30-day Ramadan, which is not eating throughout the day, eating only at sunrise and sunset. If you look at Hinduism, going to the temple, lighting up a candle or a diya, offering fruits and flowers. So all these are part of the religion. That's how you offer something. Or if you pick up Christianity, lighting up a candle in a church, that's part of religion. The way you're baptized, or the way each and every religion have their own way of taking care of the funeral process. So all these are part of religion. When you're being spiritual, it's not that you don't believe in religion. When you're being spiritual, you have a direct connect to the supreme power. It's a formless supreme power, and when you're being spiritual, you believe in karma more. You believe in what goes around comes around more. You believe you kind of understand that every all the energies of this world are linked to each other. If you impact one, the other gets impacted as well. So that's being more on the spiritual. So you're not how do I put it? You're not actually confiding in one set of rituals that you're going to follow. You will do what you feel like doing in terms of what's right, what you feel is right at that point in time. I think that's where I'll go with. You can be spiritual being sitting inside a church and sitting inside a temple, sitting inside a mosque. You can be spiritual all the three places. I can go and be spiritual at any place, for that matter. I can be spiritual in a national park as well. I can be spiritual in a market as well.
Hmm. And that's very interesting. The two different parts of it, because I myself, before I read the book, had the impression that they were the same thing. You had to be religious in order to be spiritual. Um, I remember for my 21st birthday, I went to Barcelona for 1 week by myself and visiting the cathedral there. Now, it was packed, so many people. And I can imagine that not many of those people were religious, or if they were, maybe a majority, half at best. So it kind of speaks to how people find the difference between religion and the spiritual part of it. This cathedral is massive. Um, and the same sort of thing when you go to a nice art gallery and you look at a piece of work, you can admire it for what it is. You don't have to think this is portraying a certain Christian values or blah blah blah. You can appreciate it.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. You can have your own interpretation about it, and you won't be held responsible for having an interpretation about it, as long as it's not very clear. If you've drawn a flower, yes, it's just a flower, I know that, but what the flower represents and those kind of, but yeah, I completely understand where you're coming from. Yeah, so that's the reason why I kind of wanted to bust the myth that being spiritual and being religious are two completely different things.
I agree. And you spoke about the spiritual intelligence cycle, which I found was quite fascinating. Yeah, so it helped us to, at least me reading it, I could kind of use it for success, I could use it for happiness, and use it for joy. It was, I think, centered around, or my interpretation of it, it was centered around just becoming aware of the moment, becoming aware that a negative environment doesn't have to be negative for you. It's how you take it on. It's uh, it's your personal opinion of it. So I could be in a moment at work and it's raining and it's cold. Everyone's not in a good mood. But if I'm in a, for lack of a better word, a spiritual mindset, I can think, well, the rain is here for the trees, makes everything look beautiful. The rain helps when I am in the sun. It makes me appreciate it more. It was this kind of holistic approach to life, and then you could take that into your personal career, your hobbies, your corporate career, these sort of things. That was my take on it.
It's exactly. I think you just summarized it in a very nice gist. That how spiritually being spiritually aware and then understanding the big picture, how you want to visualize it, and then getting to execute it yourself. I think that's something which the cycle talks about. And when you're spiritually aware, you understand the bigger picture. You don't see a problem as a problem. You actually see the problem or an obstacle as a solution to much bigger things, and that's where the spiritual intelligence comes into the picture, and that is where I would believe. And to be honest, a lot of people are not talking about it. I think spiritual intelligence is something which we should definitely ingrain, not only just in our schools while we are teaching kids. It should be ingrained in various corporations as well, because if you make spiritually intelligent softwares or applications, that will help humanity to do a lot more things more productively as compared to what they're doing now.
Absolutely agree. Yeah. The next big chapter I found was failure. Now, I knew briefly about the Abraham Lincoln story. I didn't quite realize it was that phenomenal, how he managed to go through so much, which I personally, I don't know if I could have handled the amount of trials and tribulations he went through. And yet he managed to use that to his advantage. And then you also talk about the Jack Ma story, who is a modern day rags to riches. Don't suppose you could tell us, because in the book you write so poetically, could tell us about one of their stories?
Okay, so regarding Jack Ma's story, I came when I was writing this chapter, I came across one of the Jack Ma's interviews where he talked about the personal failures he had and how did he use those failures to move forward, not only in life but also as a person. So he failed to get into a job with KFC a couple of times. He applied to a couple of universities in China and US. He did not get through. Um, Came from a very poor background, financially poor background, and then he got into uh, a teaching college where teachers are being taught for education industry, and that's when he went to the US to experience computer as a product and brought it to China, and that's where the whole Alibaba story starts. The beauty of the story is fine. He did what he had to do, and to land up to become one of the biggest e-commerce company in the world. Um what I picked up from that story was that, in spite of so many obstacles he faced, during his time. If I were to face those problems, I would have probably not been able to push that forward. I think it was his internal motivation to manage his day to day failures and convert them into energy, and then take it forward for, like a sales guy. Like people who do door to door sales, uh, first door they knock, maybe somebody doesn't buy it. 10 doors, nobody has bought anything. You still muster the courage to go to the 11th door. Uh, that is what I think Jack Ma's story tells you about. After even 10 to 12 big amount of failures, he could still go on to become what he became. And that's what I think we all should learn from him. Uh, because people say in retrospect, you can say he did, but when you're actually going through it, you can get inspired from such episodes. If he can do it, I'm not saying you go and build the largest e-commerce company or platform in the world, but do something worthwhile with your failures.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's funny because I remember during lockdown when we all had time to do whatever we wanted, I came across a you could call it a environment on YouTube that was 100 days of failure, and it was this person's journey. Every day he would go out and just ask for something small. He would go to Starbucks or a different type of cafe and just ask for 10% off and have no reason to do. Most of the time, they accepted it. And it got to the stage of quite extreme stuff where he'd go into the busiest street and just lie on the floor. And it was that not failure as such, but it was the coming to terms with the awkwardness, the anxiety that you may face. I know for myself in my past, there's a lot of stuff I've done or haven't done because of the fear of failure. I didn't want the embarrassment that could have come with it if it didn't work out. And the Jack Ma story, I knew him from just Alibaba. That was it. And I didn't know any of his trials, tribulations. But that story, as well as the Abraham Lincoln one you write so poetically, that going through absolute chaos in order to come through and push through it. And like you say, I think most people have it in them. They just are not allowing themselves to be in that environment to push through.
Yeah, because when you have to manage a failure, you're actually putting two things out. One is that you're vulnerable, which people don't like. That world sees them vulnerable, and then the second thing is you're putting yourself outside the comfort zone as well. Because when you're embarrassed, you're actually outside your comfort zone, and that's where humans don't like to operate in. uh, which I talked about one more thing, which I don't know if you took notice in the book. It was um, where you can increase your attentional span in a way that a comfort zone becomes an uncomfortable zone becomes your comfort zone. How you can increase your attentional space so that you can do a lot more with the given amount of space we have in our brains. So what it basically tells you is that in our brain there is a region which deals with day-to-day tasks. So let's say right now we are recording this podcast. So we are looking at the screen. We are talking about questions, and I'm talking about the answers. I'm talking about the book, and then in parallel there are other activities which are happening in my home. That the fan is switched on. So the brain is processing all of that, and our brain has a capacity of doing certain amount of tasks in one go. The idea is to increase that space that you can do more with that given amount of space. The problem is that given what is happening around us, our attentional space has been reduced or has been stolen by people like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the social media apps, smartphones, all the distractions on the smart TV, all those. So it has been occupied with that. So you have very less time to process things, and that's where people will become irritable. If you see the amount of irritability among people, the amount of intolerance among people is increased just because of this. It's a mental real estate which is taking a hit.
Yes, and also in focus, I remember we won't delve too much into it due to the time, but I do remember you talking about multitasking, and that was quite powerful for me to hear because all the time you think, oh, I can just do three things at a time. Most of the time you can't. You can split between it very quickly.
Correct. You don't multitask. You switch on and switch off.
So the last chapter, one of the most meaningful for myself as well, chapter 10, purpose.
Yeah, intentionally, it was the last chapter.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think the structure you did, at least for myself, having gratitude at the beginning, purpose at the end, was very beneficial. And then each other chapter in between that, even the ones we haven't discussed today, they're full of small information that you can use right now, small steps you can use, as well as gaining a great understanding of that particular chapter. And you use quite a lot of personal stories that help you to really hammer the different chapters home. So purpose, there was just four questions that I found was very simplistic but very true. Four questions that everyone should be asking themselves to find their purpose.
I think the first thing you should, which as an adult you should definitely ask yourself, is what is your core principle of your life? Which what is the core principle which you will be um, setting your foot on, so that that gives you the first direction. Then second question which you should definitely ask is, what is character of my life? What kind of character do I want to be, uh, leaving my legacy behind? That's something which you want to. There are people who can have both ways. I want to be a good father. Fine, go be a good father. I want to be a good son. Go be a good son. I want to be a good individual. Good. That's a very um, good character to have. On the flip side, we also have, I want to be the biggest mafia in the world. Fine. If that's the purpose, go ahead and do it. And you end up someone like Pablo Escobar. Then, and then what I'm going to contribute. When you answer these questions personally, sitting without lying to yourself, I think that's when you will find purpose. And if you don't have the answer for these questions, go look for it, because these are the questions you will ask when you're lying on your deathbed one day. That what any if you I don't know how many people you have met who have passed on. I think these are the questions which they generally ponders them the most. What did I contribute? What did I build in last 80, 70 years which I lived here? What kind of person was I? They don't remember your presentations and your Excel sheets. What they remember
Yeah.
is what kind of person you were. um, yeah. And then the last question which you want to see is, what am I trying to communicate, or as an individual, to the world? So these are a couple of questions. If you can answer them precisely as soon as possible in your lifetime, I think you are onto something from a purpose point of view. And okay, this is what my purpose is. People who don't have the answers, these they are either scrambling, or they generally are in a lot of mental despair, and that despair kind of shows on their faces by the time they turn 45, 47, 50. And what my life is aimless right now. I don't have an aim. I don't have a purpose. It's better that you ask these questions early on at the age of 15, 17, 20, so that you can get on to the journey. It's a beautiful journey to be, and be it positive or negative, I'm not going to comment on that. But both the journeys are equally rewarding and equally beautiful.
Yeah, they're so powerful as well. I find myself, if I've not got a direct journey that I have, a direct path that I've outlined, I just find myself pending. I just find myself in the loading stage of life, not going to work, but not really sure why, earning money, but not really sure why.
Yeah, so I think that's the question. If you answer these questions, that see the beauty of this is they're all what questions. They're not why questions. You just need to answer what questions more than why questions. Because when you answer a what question, the answers are generally action oriented answers. What am I doing? Okay, I am eating right now. I'll be working in an hour's time. I'll be taking a call with my friend. When you answer what questions, they're not why questions, and that's how they're intentionally designed. They need to be what questions, not why.
And you can find yourself getting trapped in thinking why did I do this, why did I do that. You go back 10, 20, 30 years thinking why. You get caught in it, don't you?
And in why questions, you can actually fool yourself. You will not be honest to yourself if it's a why question. That's where the problem is, because when you're not, then you're trying to save your face by answering a why question. I did that because I had to do it. Fine. You can save your face today, but uh, the life did not have a purpose, and that's the reason why I think when I was writing about it, no, they don't. They need to be what questions and not why questions.
Mm. Yeah, I didn't quite draw that distinction when I read the book, but now that you've mentioned it, is yeah, a key but subtle.
Yeah. See, the point is, when we are leading your life, right? You don't have to be an expert on stress management, time management, or focus, or but you still need to have a working understanding of all of these so that you can lead a healthy, good, purposeful life. At the end of the day, every each one of us want a purposeful life where we are able to make an impact, we are able to contribute, and we are also able to enjoy that impact. um, and you don't have to be a guru on that. And the reason why I wrote the way I wrote it was is because of that.
That's very true. That is very true. And if there is one book that everyone should read, it's definitely yours. What School Doesn't Teach You. Nihit Mohan, thank you very much for joining me. If people want to catch up with the work you're doing, where can they find you?
They can find me on internet. My I have a website called nihitmohan.com. They can definitely catch up with me on that. There are contact info available. They can look me up on LinkedIn. My name is unique. There is no other Nihit Mohan. So you should be able to find me. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram as well.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Nihit.
Thank you, man.